The next day, Casey and Jack and AJ walked downtown, casing possible places for a job. They walked past the park where Casey had seen 𝓑𝓫. Casey glanced into a grove of trees and saw the leaves rise and swirl like they had around the dancing doll. She put on her glasses, and there 𝓑𝓫 was, closer than before. She was getting closer every day. If Casey could just get the guys to see the doll, she would feel a lot better. Casey took off the glasses and hurried to catch up to Jack and AJ. "Wait, you guys," Casey said. She held out the glasses. "Put these on and look over there, right in the middle of those trees." "Again?" AJ said. "Not me. I love you like a sister, Casey, but I'm done with this weirdness." Jack rolled his eyes but said, "Alright, give them here." He put them on and looked where Casey was pointing. Nothing. Nothing? Casey's heart sank. "Zilk, zip, nada," Jack said. "The way I see it, there are two solutions to this problem. One is locking you up in a soft room, and the other is this." He dropped the glasses in a nearby trash can. "There, problem solved, okay?" Casey felt a wave of relief wash over her. Jack was right. No glasses, no problem. Okay. She even felt herself smiling a little. "Thanks, Jack." "You're welcome," Jack said. "Now, you need to pull it together. The thieves' den needs your quick wits and nimble fingers. No more freaking out over weird stuff." Casey nodded. She couldn't believe she had let herself fall apart because of a cheap toy. "Quick wits and nimble fingers. You've got 'em," Casey said, waggling her fingers. "Why don't we take the bus to the Walmart and see if we can get that lady's credit card to work?" "Excellent idea," Jack said. "See, you're better already." The guys headed on toward the bus stop, but Casey hesitated. The glasses were what made her see 𝓑𝓫. Being rid of them, she wouldn't see 𝓑𝓫, but that didn't mean 𝓑𝓫 wouldn't be there. She could still be following Casey, getting closer to her every day, but Casey would have no idea of knowing where she was. The thought of an invisible 𝓑𝓫 was scarier than the thought of a visible one. Casey reached into the trash can, retrieved the glasses, and put them back in her pocket before she ran to the bus stop. At the big box store, Casey picked out a pair of new boots. Heavy, comfortable, and practical. They all grabbed packages of socks and underwear and shirts. Buying too much stuff would arouse suspicion, so they tried to limit themselves to the things they needed the most. As always, Casey was the one to make a purchase because of her honest face. Her face didn't matter much, though, because the cashier rang up on items without looking at her. Then she asked robotically, "Debit, credit, or cash?" "Credit," Casey said, holding out the stolen card. The woman scanned the card in the machine, frowned, then tried again. "I'm sorry, ma'am, this card has been declined. Do you have another card you'd like to use today?" "No, thank you." Casey grabbed the useless card, abandoned her attempted purchases, and walked quickly to the front door where Jack and AJ were waiting. "Declined," she said. "Well, that sucks," Jack said as they walked out the door. AJ shook his head. "The lady must have reported it stolen. Too bad. I was kind of looking forward to my new socks and undies." "Only one thing to do," Casey said. She took out her big scissors, cut the card into tiny pieces, and scattered the confetti into the nearest trash can. On the way back to the warehouse, they passed the park. Casey heard the rustling of leaves and glanced over to see them swirling. That didn't mean 𝓑𝓫 was there, she told herself. She clenched her hands into her fist to stop herself from getting the glasses out of her pocket. The swirling leaves meant only that it was a windy day, that was all. Tonight's job had to make up for their run of bad luck. They sat huddled in the warehouse, eating canned ravioli with their hands and trying to figure out their next move. "We could try that pizza place again," Jack said. "People do take cash to those places." "No." Casey's response was automatic and forceful. "Why not?" Jack said. "Afraid you might end up with some scary possessed toy?" "It's not that," Casey said. She probably deserved the mockery. She had let the thing with glasses get out of control. "I just don't like to get kids involved, okay?" "We've not done the train station in a while," AJ said. "It's real quick to mix in with a crowd there and pick some real pockets." "It might be a good way to get your confidence back, Casey." "Yeah, let's do that," Casey said. That's what she needed, an easy job. They didn't even have to go inside the station, just wait until rush hour when a bunch of people came spilling out the station's exit, then slip into the crowd unseen. Casey eased her way into the mass of people scoping for prosperous-looking businessmen, with wallet-shaped bulges in their back pockets. She just found one and was reaching for it when someone grabbed her arm. She was startled, then saw it was Jack. She mouthed the words, "Let's go." When she saw the flashing blue lights, she understood. A police car had pulled up to the curb. Casey and AJ and Jack walked with the crowd, nice and casual, like they had just gotten off the train themselves. Casey didn't breathe easy until the blue light was way behind them. Could this day have been any worse? Jack said once they were back in the warehouse. Bad luck always comes in threes, AJ said, holding up 3 fingers. So you've got 2 down and 1 to go. I don't believe in superstition, Jack said. Not black cats, not broken mirrors, none of it. It was chilly in the warehouse, warmer than inside, but still not warm. Casey decided to keep a jacket on. It was getting nippier at night, and her hands were cold. Soon she'd have to buy or steal some gloves. She shoved her hands in her jacket pockets for warmth. There were the glasses. Where was 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮? Was 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 about to catch her? Was that the 3rd piece of bad luck? Her heart pounded in panic, and she ran past Jack and AJ out of the warehouse. Now the cold was the least of her worries. Outside, she put her head in her hands and paced back and forth. Finally, with a shaking hand, she reached into her pocket and took out the glasses. Because she couldn't help herself, she put them on. There, under a beam from a streetlight only a few yards away, 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮 twirled. She was closer than she'd ever been before. Casey could see every joint in her body, each detail of her face, torso, and tutu. She was beautiful and horrible at the same time, and she was definitely getting closer. Casey tore the glasses off and shoved them back into her pocket. She sat on the cold, damp curb and tried to think. Each time she had seen 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶, she had been a little closer. What was going to happen when 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 got close enough to touch her? Could 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 catch her? Kelsey felt like she was waiting for a punishment. She didn't know if it would be swift and sure or long and torturous. She didn't want to know. There had to be a way to escape, Casey thought. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 had appeared the first time outside Circus Baby's Pizza World, the scene where Casey had stolen the glasses. Since then, 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 had stalked her throughout the city. Maybe, Casey thought, 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 could only follow her in the city where the crime had occurred. Maybe if Kelsey could leave, go somewhere else, she could leave 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 behind. It was worth a shot. Casey waited until Jack and AJ were asleep, then sneaked into the warehouse and quietly rolled up her sleeping bag, grabbing her backpack of belongings. She took a portion of the money from the thieves' den hiding place and left Jack and AJ the rest. She wouldn't steal from them. They had been like brothers to her, annoying sometimes, but good to her in their own way. It was a long walk to the bus station. She looked at the list of departures. The next bus leaving was headed for Memphis at 6 a.m. She guessed she was going to Memphis. She bought a ticket, which cost half of all of her money, then settled on a bench to try to sleep a couple of hours. She woke at 4:30, aware of someone near her. Someone near her. Sorry. She clutched her backpack to protect her belongings from people like herself. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up." The voice belonged to an elderly lady with grey hair and skin a couple of shades darker than Casey's. She had on a butter yellow flowered dress and a matching hat. She looked like she was going to church. "It's okay," Casey said. "I need to wake up anyway. My bus leaves in an hour and a half." "Where are you headed?" The lady settled herself down next to Casey. For a second, Casey wondered if she should tell her, but the old woman's tone was so kind she didn't see the harm in it. "Memphis," she said. "Oh, that won't be too long a trip," the lady said. "I'm going to Chicago to see my son and daughter, in-law and my grandbabies. It'll be a nice visit once I get there, but it's going to be a long bus ride. You got family in Memphis?" "No, Mum," Casey said. "I'm just looking for a fresh start." It wasn't like she could tell the old lady she was running from a ballerina doll that possibly meant her harm. That would make the old lady move off the bench real fast. "You got a job lined up?" the old lady asked. "No, but I'll find something," Casey said. "I always do." "Good for you," the lady said, patting Casey's arm. "I like to see a young person with some gumption." She picked up a big straw tote bag and started rummaging through it. "You hungry, baby? I packed enough breakfast, lunch, and dinner for an army. There's no way I'm paying for a bus station food. It's expensive, it tastes bad, and it's bad for you." Casey was hungry. She hadn't realized it until the lady mentioned food. "I am a little, yeah, but you don't have to share if you don't. I've got plenty, baby." From the bag she produced a small bottle of orange juice, cold and wet with condensation. Then she handed Casey something wrapped in aluminum foil. "Ham biscuit," she said. "You're not one of those young people who don't eat pork, are you?" "No, ma'am. I'll eat anything that's put in front of me, thank you. The biscuit was homemade and fluffy, and the ham was just the right amount of sweet and savoury. It was the best food Casey has eaten in a long time. Delicious, she said. I'm glad you like it. The old woman patted Casey's arm one more time, and then rose stiffly from the bench. I'd better go to the ladies' room before I get on the bus. Those bathrooms on the bus are not fun. I like a bathroom that stays put. Casey laughed. Yes, ma'am. It was the nicest conversation she could remember having in a long time. The old lady looked at Casey for a long moment. Listen, I know it's not my place, but since I'm never going to see you again, I may as well say my piece. You seem like a young lady who's running away from something. In my experience, sometimes if you try and run away from your problems, those problems just end up following you. Does that make sense? Casey nodded. She couldn't look into the lady's eyes. It's better to build bridges than to burn them, honey. You remember that? The old lady tottered away, and Casey felt a chill at the prospect of her problems following her, of Ballora following her. She hoped with all of her heart that that the old lady was wrong. Casey stepped. Oh my gosh! Sorry, you're probably getting annoyed with me messing up so much. I am. Casey slept through most of the long bus ride, waking occasionally to look out the window at the passing landscape. This was the longest trip she had ever taken, so she might as well enjoy the scenery. The further she travelled, the more hopeful she felt. A fresh start. That's what she told the old lady she was headed for. And maybe she really was. No more stealing, no more living in fear, no more being stalked by a creepy twirling ballerina doll. Casey walked out the bus station and into the Memphis sunshine. The sign at a rundown aqua-coloured motel called the Best Choice Inn advertised rooms for $29.99 per night. Casey seriously doubted it was truly the best choice, but it was better than sleeping on the street, and she had $40 in her pocket. She walked into the motel's dark office and handed a 10 and a 20 to a haggard woman in a housecoat and bedroom slippers. The room had decades-old cheap panelling and once tan carpet stained by many years' worth of careless guests. But there was a double bed and a cable TV and a bathroom that Casey could have had all to herself. The first step in her fresh start was a shower. Casey let the hot water pound her neck and her shoulders. She couldn't remember the last time she'd washed her hair, and she used the whole little bottle of motel-issued shampoo to lather up her braids and her scalp. She soaped herself from head to toe and let the jets of hot water rinse her clean. It was heaven. Casey always tried to keep up her hygiene, living on the streets, but there was no way baby wipes in a fast food restroom sink could compare to a real hot shower. After she dried off, Casey brushed her teeth and put on the cleanest clothes she had. It was time to find her fresh start. Walking the streets of Memphis, she came across an old diner called the Royal Cafe, which had a hand-lettered sign in the window reading, "Help Wanted." Oh god. The cafe wasn't royal anymore, then the motel she was staying was the best choice, but she had to be realistic. How long had it been since she had worked a real job? Not since the time at Famous Fried Chicken, where she'd stolen that 20 and started her life of crime. Inside the Royal Cafe, a bleached blonde waitress, who could have been anywhere from 35 to 65, said, "Sit anywhere you want. I'm here about the job," Casey said. The waitress turned her head and yelled, "Jimmy!" An olive-skinned man with tired eyes came out of the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. His apron was stained with grease of various ages. "Yeah?" he said. "She's here about the job," the waitress said. Her tone implied that she didn't think Casey was a very good candidate. "You ever bust tables and washed dishes before?" The man, presumably Jimmy, asked. "Sure," Casey said. She hadn't, but how hard could it be? "Them bus pans and dish trays can be pretty heavy. You think you can handle them?" "You're an itty-bitty thing." "I'm small, but I'm strong." He smiled a little. "You got a name?" "Casey." "When can you start, Casey?" It wasn't a very demanding interview. She hadn't even told her last name. When do you need me?" "How about now?" It wasn't like she had anything else to do. She might as well start earning money right now. "Sure, but don't I need training or something?" Jimmy looked at her like she had asked a stupid question. "You get a bus pan, you clear the dishes from the tables and put them in the bus pan, you carry the dishes to the kitchen, rinse them in hot water in the sink, then load them in the dishwasher and turn it on. When the dishes are clean, you unload the dishwasher and stack the dishes on the shelves. You got that? Yes, sir. Good. That was your training. It's minimum wage, paid in cash at the end of the week. 7 till 2, Monday through Friday, with one free meal per shift. That okay with you? Yes, sir. The pay was low, but she'd be off work by 2, and a free hot meal every day would help her out a lot. Good, he said. Get to work. The job wasn't so bad. Jimmy yelled a lot, but it was never anything personal. Casey was able to rent her room in the Best Choice Inn by the week. She got to take advantage of the laundry room, the shower, and the cable TV, and the one big meal a day at the diner went a long way toward keeping her fed. Plus, Jimmy was a good cook. He said he was too skinny. She was too skinny, and his blue plate specials of meatloaf and turkey and dressing were starting to put a little meat on her bones. The work was physically hard, but mindless enough that she could daydream about whatever she wanted. Her only problem at work was that Brenda, the waitress she'd met the first time she walked into the place, seemed to have taken a dislike to her. Is that your real name, Casey? Brenda asked her one day while Casey was bussing a table. Sure is. She didn't look up. She kept on loading dishes into the pan. I was just wondering, because you didn't even give Jimmy your last name. He may not have good sense, but I do. Is that a fact? Casey said, dumping silverware into the bus pan with a clatter. You seem shifty to me, Brenda said, looking at her with narrowed eyes, like you're hiding something. Everybody's hiding something, Casey said lightly, picking up the heavy tray, even if it's just their holy old underwear under the clothes. She carried the full bus pan back to the kitchen. There was no way Brenda could find out about Casey's past as a thief. Fortunately, there were no arrest records since she had never been caught. Still, Brenda made Casey felt like she was being watched, and it was a feeling Casey didn't like. One afternoon, when Casey was bussing tables, she spotted 2 $5 bills lying under the salt and pepper shakers. The 2 5s reminded her of that $20 bill she lifted so easily at Famous Fried Chicken. Her fingers felt itchy. Brenda had gone out, back for a 5-minute break, and Casey was sure she hadn't seen the money. In one swift motion, she palmed one $5 bill and left the other where it was. It wasn't really stealing, Casey decided. It was just splitting the tip 50-50 between the person who served the customer and the person who cleaned up after the customer. Cleaning up was harder too. Customers were messy. Splitting the tip was perfectly fair. Casey promised herself that she wouldn't make a habit of taking tip money, and she didn't, not really. She only stole when Brenda was on break or looking away, and she never took the whole tip. If a customer left $3, Casey took 1. If a customer left 7, Casey took 2. It wasn't much, but it helped with the little things, doing a load of laundry at the motel, buying snacks and soda to have when she watched TV, and besides, Brenda was always mean to her. Taking a bit from her tip was like getting paid extra for hazardous duty. Today Casey felt unusually hungry when she walked to work. She ignored the fall leaves that swirled near her and left her glasses in her jacket pocket. She willed herself not to think about Ballora, but to think about food instead. Usually she took her 1 free meal per shift at lunch, but today she thought she might order breakfast instead. The Royal Breakfast Special, she decided. 3 buttermilk pancakes, 2 eggs to order, bacon, and home fries. She was running early this morning, so she would have time to eat before the first customers trickled in. When she walked into the restaurant, Jimmy and Brenda were sitting together in the booth like they were waiting for her. They did not look happy. Casey, I'm glad you got here early this morning, Jimmy said, gesturing for her to sit down across from them. We need to talk. In Casey's experience, when somebody said, we need to talk, the words that came after weren't going to be good. Nobody ever said, we need to talk, so how about a raise in this plate of warm cookies? With a sinking feeling, Casey sat down in the booth. Jimmy folded his hands in front of him. Brenda has told me that since you started working here, she's been getting a lot less money in tips. Do you know anything about that? The hunger in Casey's stomach was replaced by fear. How am I supposed to know what Brenda makes in tips? She asked. Well, Jimmy said, customers leave their tips on the table, and sometimes the money's still on the table when you bus it. So, I know you've been stealing tips off the table, Brenda interrupted. Her face was red with rage. Not all the money, but enough so you think I won't notice. But I do notice. I know my regular customers. I know what they order, and I know how much they tip. Casey remembered the first rule of Thieves' Den. If suspected or caught, deny, deny, deny. Look, Brenda, I know you didn't like me from the moment I walked in the door, and that's okay. You don't have to like me. But that doesn't mean you have the right to accuse me of things I don't know anything about. See? Brenda elbowed Jimmy. Shifty. Like I said, aren't you going to fire her? Jimmy closed his eyes and massaged his temples like he had the worst headache. He was quiet so long that Casey finally broke the silence and said, Am I being fired, Jimmy? Jimmy opened his eyes. You're not being fired. You're being watched. If there's anything to what Brenda says, cut it out, or you will be fired. Now get back to work. Yes, sir. Cut it out, Brenda said. That's it. Like I said, I'm watching her, Jimmy said. Then looked at the door. Here comes the early morning crowd. You'd better get to work too. On the way home, Casey walked past the grassy area where the autumn leaves rose and swirled in a circle. Fine, she said to herself, and put on the glasses. There was 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮, spinning nearer than ever. Clearly, there was no getting away from her. Dizziness overcame Kelsey. Oh my god, I said Kelsey. Oh no! I might have said Kelsey before, not gonna lie. The names are pretty similar. Dizziness overcame Casey. Why? She yelled. Why do you keep following me? Several people turned to look at her like she was crazy. Was she crazy? She didn't even know anymore. That night, Casey dreamed she was sitting in a red velvet seat in a beautiful theatre with a golden domed ceiling. The theatre was empty except for Casey. The lights went down, sending the room into darkness, and orchestral music swelled. The lights came up on the stage, and 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 danced out on tiptoe. She danced to the left side of the stage, and a huge purple and gold satin banner unrolled from the ceiling. It was printed in fancy letters with the word liar. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 put her hands to her cheeks as if startled, then lifted her arms for a long pirouette. She danced over to the right side of the stage, where another large purple and gold banner unrolled. This one was printed with the word thief. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 put her hands to her cheeks again, then danced to the centre of the stage, spun, and looked directly at Kelsey. Oh my god, I said Kelsey again. Okay. Yeah. She pointed at her, and one more banner unfurled itself centre stage. This one says you. Casey woke up gasping in a cold sweat. She got up, threw on some clothes, yanked open the dresser drawers, and stuck the rest of her clothes in her backpack along with a coffee can of cash she'd saved up from working at the Royal Cafe. She couldn't go back there. They were onto her. She threw a couple of bills on the nightstand to cover the rest of the rent, then walked towards the bus station. The fresh air calmed her a little. She shoved her hands in her pockets. These were the glasses. She decided to take one last look. This time, she was really leaving 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 behind. With a shaking hand, she took them out and put them on. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶 was dancing just a few feet away from her. Casey could see every hinge, every tiny flaw in the paint job. If she walked 20 steps, the two of them would be close enough to touch. Casey shuddered and took off the glasses. Okay, I get it, she thought. I didn't really make a fresh start. I stole and I lied about it. But if I can just get away from her, I really will start over. I'll be a model citizen. The next bus out of town was going to Nashville. Nashville, Casey thought. Why not? A new town, a new job, a new start. For real this time. Once she was settled on the bus, Casey sank into a dreamless sleep. The Music City Motel where Casey rented a room had the same cheap paneling and stained carpet as the motel in Memphis, but it cost $5 more a night. Lying on the lumpy mattress, looking at the want ads in a newspaper, Casey told herself she needed to make a real life. She needed to live instead of just surviving. She needed a job that could give her some kind of future. She needed to make friends, save up some money, and get that little apartment she dreamed of as a kid. Maybe she could go back to school at night and get her diploma. And she could get a dog. She still wanted a dog. Scanning through the want ads, 1/4 eye, no experience necessary, opportunities for advancement. Answer incoming calls for a major retail company. Must be able to communicate well, must be able to work in busy, fast-paced environment, start at $12 per hour with raises based on merit, open interviews Monday through Friday 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It sounded better than washing dishes. But Casey had nothing to wear to an interview for an office job. She had remembered a business communications class she'd taken in high school. The textbook had a whole chapter on how to dress and present yourself for a job interview. Ripped, faded jeans and old boots repaired with duct tape definitely weren't on the list of acceptable apparel. Casey got the coffee can from when she'd hidden it in the dresser drawer. She dumped all her money out on the bed and counted it. $229.76. When she set aside what she needed to pay for the room and the few groceries she bought, that left her with $44.76. Surely she could buy something to wear with that. She set out on foot in search of a store. She figured the nice clothing stores wouldn't be on this side of town, with its cheap motels and pawn shops and bail bondsmen's offices. She didn't want to spend any of her meagre money on a bus ride to the mall. Besides, she wouldn't be able to afford anything in one of the nice stores anyway. After an hour of walking, her feet aching in her battered boots, she found a store called Unique Fashions. In the window, bald, white, faceless mannequins modelled colourful dresses. Surely a store in this neighbourhood wouldn't be too expensive. Casey opened the door and started a little, when the bell chimed. I think I'm supposed to say startled. She passed a floor-length mirror and saw herself as she must look to other people. Her clothes old, baggy, and ill-fitting. Her face tired beyond her years. She didn't look like she belonged in this store with its bright lights and neat racks of dresses, tops, and skirts. Maybe she should just go. "Let me know if there's anything I can help you with, honey," the woman behind the counter said. She was around the age of Casey's mum, wearing a canary yellow dress with a bright scarf and perfectly applied makeup. Casey wondered if she would ever look so put together. "Thank you," she said. Casey browsed through the racks of clothing, not sure what would be best for a job interview. Not even sure of what size she wore. Finally, she found a crimson dress splashed with cream-coloured flowers. She remembered that once a cute boy in high school had told her red was her colour. She knew it would look good on her. The sales lady who had been the cash register appeared beside her as if by magic. "Do you want to try that on, honey?" Casey nodded. "Trouble is, I've not worn a dress in so long I don't even know what size I wear." The lady looked her up and down. "Well, you're no bigger than a minute. I'll try a 6. She smiled. "It's been a long time since I was 6. About 3 kids ago." "I bet you don't have any of those yet, do you?" "No, ma'am, not yet." Casey held on to the dress and tried to imagine a future with a steady job, a comfortable place to live, maybe even a husband and kids. Could that kind of life ever be in the cards for someone like her? It was hard to even picture what it would be like. "The fitting rooms are over there," the sales lady said. "Just holler if you need anything." "Thank you." Casey locked herself in one of the tiny rooms and slipped off her boots, jacket, jeans and t-shirt. She pulled the dress over her head and looked at herself in the mirror. The sales lady had been right. Casey was a size 6. The dress fit perfectly, not too loose and not too tight, and the crimson and cream print complemented her skin tone. She looked respectable, like a regular person going to a regular job interview. Except that she had forgotten one thing. Standing in front of the mirror, Casey looked at her bare feet, which certainly weren't acceptable in an office job, but neither was wearing battered taped-up boots with her new nice dress. She had forgotten she needed shoes, and shoes were expensive. Feeling discouraged, she took off the dress and put on her ratty old clothes. She carried the dress with her out of the fitting room. There was a small shoe section in the back of the store. She figured she might as well see how much a pair would cost. There were some decent-looking 10 flats in a size on sale for $21.97, but she couldn't afford the shoes and the dress too, even with the discounted price. Desperate, panicked, Casey looked around the store. There were no visible security cameras, and the sales lady was busy helping another customer, an elderly lady trying on a pink suit jacket. This would be the last time, Casey promised herself. She was only doing it so she could get a job interview. She rolled up the dress, as small as she could, and stuffed it in her backpack. She took a deep breath, grabbed the shoebox with her flats in it, and headed to the cash register. When the sales lady came to check her out, she said, "Decided not to get the dress? Just these today," Casey said, handing the sales lady a 20 and a 10. At least she was paying for the shoes and not stealing them too, Casey thought. Plus, they would have been difficult to fit in her bag. The saleslady gave Casey her change, bagged up the shoe, and handed it to her. "Thank you, honey. I hope you come back and see us soon." When Casey approached the front door, a horrible buzzing sound filled the store. Casey's stomach knotted in fear. The dress must have been some type of anti-theft device on it that activated the alarm. Caught. She'd never been caught before. "Wait just a second there, honey," the saleslady called. "I must not have scanned those shoes right." Casey was about to make a run for it, but outside the front door of the store, hundreds of fall leaves swelled up furiously like a mini tornado. Casey didn't have to put on the glasses to know that Laura was right in the center of a tempest. Her heart pounded on her chest. Casey knew that if she bolted out the door, she'd run right into Ballora. She was trapped. One way or the other, she was caught. At least if she stayed in the store, she had some idea of what the consequences would be. If she surrendered herself to Ballora, she had no idea what would happen. She just kept imagining Ballora's long, sharp nails, her teeth. Oh my gosh. The buzzing alarm hurt her eyes, making it impossible to think straight. "Is there a problem, Helen?" Another well-dressed woman... Is there a problem, Helen? Another well-dressed woman, probably the manager, had emerged from the back of the store. In seconds, the manager and the saleslady were beside Casey. "Let me see your bag for just a second," the saleslady said. Casey handed it over, hoping they didn't notice how hard she was shaking. The saleslady showed the manager the receipt. "See, she paid for her purchase." The manager was looking at Casey as if she could see every misdeed Casey had ever committed. "I think we better check her backpack too." She turned to Casey. "Miss, we need to open your backpack and let us look inside. If everything checks out, you'll be free to go with our apologies for the inconvenience." Casey glanced outside. The leaves were swirling closer and harder, smacking against the glass of the door. She swallowed hard. There was no choice. Casey opened her backpack. The crimson of the dress tucked inside it was as bright as blood. "That's the dress she tried on," the saleslady said. She sounded like Casey's theft was a personal betrayal. The manager grabbed Casey's arm. "Well, that's that. I don't have any choice but to call the police." Casey looked outside at the swirling leaves, then back at the stern faces of the two women. Her eyes filled with tears, which was strange because Casey couldn't remember the last time she had cried. But now she cried for all the things she had lost, for all the bad things she'd done, and all the good things she had never got to experience. "Please," Casey said, sobbing, "don't call the police. I need the dress and shoes for a job interview. But I didn't have enough money for both of them." "So you thought stealing the dress was a good solution to that problem?" The manager was still holding Casey's arm. "I knew it wasn't a good solution," Casey said through her tears. "It was the only solution I could think of. I'm so sorry." Where were all of these tears coming from? It was like she was a human waterfall. "I have a solution." A voice came from behind them. It was the elderly woman that saleslady had been helping earlier. Her hair was perfectly groomed, and she was dressed elegantly in a cream-coloured pantsuit. "I'll buy the young lady the dress." "Mrs. Templeton, we couldn't let you do that," the manager said. "Of course you can," Mrs. Templeton said. "I spent a lot of money at this store. I'm a good customer, and the customer is always right." She smiled at the manager and saleslady. "Right?" "Right," the manager said, but she sounded reluctant. "Good." Mrs. Templeton offered her purse and took out her wallet. "Now there's no need to call the police, and this young lady can get to a job interview." "What if there isn't a job interview?" the manager said. "What if she's lying?" Mrs. Templeton looked Casey up and down. "Well, that's a risk I'm willing to take, but I think she's telling the truth. She has an honest face. She was just in a desperate situation and didn't use her best judgment." "Thank you," Casey said, tears still flowing. "I'll pay you back when I can." "Nonsense," Mrs. Templeton waved off Casey's offer. "You just help out somebody else when they need it." Casey walked out of the store through all the swirling leaves. As she made her way down the street, she was still crying and drawing concerned looks from passers-by. She couldn't explain it, but she felt like she was changing, like something hard inside her was softening and breaking up. She stopped at a park to rest for a few minutes. She was tired from all the walking, from all the stress and fear. She sat on a bench and her hand reached into her pocket for the glasses before she even knew what she was doing. Had she lost Ballora after the woman at the store had made things right? No, she was right there. Ballora stood before her entwirled, just a little more than arm's length away. She seemed to stare at Casey with her blank blue eyes, and then she spun and spun, creating a breeze Casey could feel on her face. She was close enough to touch. "Why?" Casey yelled. "Why can I not get rid of you?" She shoved the glasses in her pocket and ran. She ran away from Ballora, even though in her heart she knew Ballora was right there with her. She ran to the Music City Motel and locked the door behind her, panting. The words of the old woman at the bus station came back to her suddenly. Sometimes, when you try to run away from your problems, those problems end up following you. Scratch, scratch. The sound was coming from the window. Casey pulled back the curtain and saw nothing. Then she put on the glasses. Ballora was pressed against the window. Her face, pretty at a distance, was terrifying up close, split down the middle, with a gaping red mouth and glowing eyes, eyes which Casey thought saw right into her soul. Ballora's long, blue-painted fingernail scraped against the glass with a horrible metallic screech. Casey backed away from the window. "Okay, Ballora," Casey said. Please just let me get to this job interview first. Then I know what I have to do." Ballora said nothing, just watched her with glowing blue eyes. Casey sat down on the bed and dug around in her backpack until she found what she was looking for. The driver's license of the woman whose purse she had stolen outside of Circus Baby's Pizza World.